Welcome back to Greg and Don's Excellent Adventure. This is Don Gertz with Greg DeMarco, and we're here to talk about sales and to try to help you discern what it is that you need to be doing. So we've talked about a number of different topics in the past, and you can go back into it. We'll have a link on this video somewhere or in the comments on where the previous sessions were. But today we thought we'd like to talk about when you cut through all the clutter and all that other kind of stuff, what are the main things that salespeople need to be aware of? And I was thinking that for me, I think the first thing that a person needs to know is what the problem is that they solve. And then they need to know who they do that for. And they need to know how they do that. They need to develop a process for doing that. So what say you, Greg?
What say me? Well, I got a lot of things floating around in this head right now. I do think that is a huge one of sort of a few things that salespeople really need to understand. But, I think it really starts with themselves, and self-image and how they see themselves. I think I see this as a stumbling block for a lot of people I work with. Is they lack a lot of confidence, and that all comes down to that self-image of themselves and where they stand and what they see them, how they see themselves. And really, when it comes down to self-image, your self-esteem, your self-worth, that all flows out in what you do. So I think that's important to get that reined in and understood that you are a professional and that you understand who it is you're dealing with, which comes to your point, understanding what they sell, and that's huge. And then what their buyers' desires are, and wants. Desires are what really controls the sale, not your wants, but the desire that your buyer has, right? So that's kind of where I come in with all that, understanding your confidence level with your self-worth, and then understanding that there are desires that the buyers have that you need to understand.
I know with brand new realtors, or one of the challenges they have often is they thinking, I'm brand new, I don't really know what I'm doing. Why would someone want to trust me with the sale of their most important asset, typically their most important asset? And those are real questions that they suffer from. And that I think would go into your idea there, or your comment about the self-image, because how do they see themselves? And I think that's a false feeling that we have, and that we should recognize that it maybe it more is a limiting belief than it is that something that's actually true. With new realtors, they've got the resources. Typically, they got the resources behind them. They have someone with experience that they work with. They have their office behind them. So there's all kinds of different things that they can set up
Exactly.
for them, to help them through.
Well, here's one of the things that I think about, because I've actually worked with a real estate team, and in the last 6 months there. So what had happened was one of the individuals had come up to me and asked me a really good question. She said, because she was younger and a lot of her clients were sort of our age. She
Are you saying that we're old, Greg?
Oh, I said
that we're old. I'm actually older than you, so.
Well, I know, that's why I was being careful, Don. Just because I'm younger and better looking doesn't mean that you don't show respect for your elders. So, but what happened was she had raised a good point. She said, "Why would somebody my age want to deal with her or work with her when she's like 30 years old?" And here's the thing about that. I said to her that, do you know your product? Do you know what you're selling? Because a lot of the times when it comes to this confidence or self-image stuff can be eliminated by the fact that you know what it is your product is, and you understand what you're selling, and you understand the business you're in. all that starts to melt away, all those limiting beliefs, because what is a limiting belief or self-image problem or lack of confidence? It does come down to, how you feel about yourself, but really a lot of that can be eliminated by understanding what it is you are selling and the purpose of it and how to sell it. So if you understand the product and you understand what your buyer's looking for, that buyer is not going to care as long as you are taking care of them, you care about them, and you do what you say you're going to do. And that's really, in the end, I think what buyers are looking for. So the self-confidence side, a lot of that can be eliminated by just understanding your product and what you do and your service and focused on that. That's my take on it anyway.
When you talk about what the buyer's looking for, really what they're looking for is they're looking for a solution to a problem, typically.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
when you understand what the problem is that buyer has, and you provide the process or process, when you provide the
We're Canadian, Don.
yeah. Yeah, I'm married to an American, so I do it both ways, and then I never know. I'm confused. We understand, and when you understand the process of how what you do solves their problem, then you're able to. They're going to recognize that, and they'll be more likely to choose your services. But it's really important, I think, to understand your product knowledge. Now, everybody has different things. Like in real estate, sometimes our product is what the market is doing. Understanding the real estate market is sometimes could be perceived as what our product is, because my product that I sell is really my expertise in dealing with a person's real estate and helping them transition from one place to another. So if I don't understand my process in there and how I go about providing them that service, then why would they have the confidence in me to list their house with me and guide them through that whole transaction?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You hit it bang on, because it's the same thing I say to a lot of my clients is, it's the same thing. If you don't have any enthusiasm for what it is you're selling, then why would your buyer be enthusiastic about buying it? And it's the same thing. You have to understand what you have to be present. Like I've said in the past, you have to be present and participate in what it is you're doing and understand what it is you want to accomplish. But it's about them, right? What does your buyer want?
So recognizing what the buyer wants, recognizing having a process by which to guide them through that process would be the best place to start. And part of that process is understanding what it is you're actually selling.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, that's if you want to start getting confidence in yourself, other than looking at past accomplishments, I think you really need to understand your product and your solution and what, as you put it, what's the solution to their problem. That's where it's all got to begin. And there's a desire, understanding that's what leads the sale is this big word called desire. And there's a desire that a buyer has. You have to isolate the desire. And then wants don't control sales. Desire does. So once you isolate the buyer's desire, his pain point, their challenges, and you understand that your solution, cures that, that's when you have to really be focused on that conversation.
So you're talking about desire and wants being different, and I get that, but for our listeners, maybe there's a bit of a nuance there, because I might want something. What's the difference between my desiring that? Can you elaborate on that a little bit? What the difference you see as between wants and desires?
Well, I guess the best way to explain it, if I'm really thinking about that, is, everybody wants something. That's a nice car, I want it, or, that's a nice piece of jewelry, or that's a really nice shirt. Those are wants. I think the desire desire really controls people's bodies and actions. So when you really get a desire for something, you're not letting it go. It's something I think that's deep within your subconscious. And I know I'm getting kind of technical in that. There is a science behind understanding people's desires, but usually when they're coming to you and they're talking about making a big purchase, if we're talking about real estate, I think you'll sense this. I think it's a desire is a sense you feel as a salesperson by how excited. What are their actions? Desire really starts spilling out in people's actions. You see it in their face, their eyes, how they're breathing, body language. You've got to be a student of body language and tonality to really understand it.
It's an interesting point. One of the trainers that I've listened to in the past, he describes it a little bit like this. He says everybody wants to get to heaven, but no one wants to die to get there. So it's kind of like how much are you willing to invest in the process of actually getting to where you want to be? I think that's the desire is a deeper understanding that this is something that you need to have and you need to do. And if I relate that to real estate, I would say that sometimes somebody in real estate might say, well, yeah, sure, I'd like to move into that bigger house or that move into that, move on in my life. But I'll do that if I get, X number of dollars for my place, and X number of dollars may be higher than what the property is actually worth, but they're willing to do it only if it meets certain criteria. Whereas if somebody that really needs to move, they say, I need to move, whether the marketplace, gives me what I want or gives me what I need, it's going to, I need to make adjustments. So the desire is much stronger to move because they recognize that they're willing to do what it takes to sell their property.
Yeah.
Does that?
Yeah, it is. I mean, wants become desires. Basically that's what becomes the desire. But the desire, I think, because it does show more in your actions and your body language, and that's more of a passionate, I think, a persistent and passionate thing. And I think you're right. I think that's what it comes down to. And they will let you know if you're sharp enough to see the signs and hear it in their voice and their language. Then yeah, it's going that way.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts on it anyway.
No, I mean, it's an interesting concept. It's just, like we get into semantics sometimes with the nuances of different words. And I think it's important to clarify, what it is, when we hear them, because yeah, so it's interesting to recognize what it is that a person has to do to really get started. And that's to understand, what are the things, what are the main things that they have to do. So if you were to put that into one sentence, let's just come to a conclusion here, Greg. What would be the one sentence that you think a new salesperson has to understand to be successful in whatever business they're in?
Well, first thing, self-image, confidence. The second thing is understanding the buyer, what their pain is, what their challenge is, and being able to solve that solution or solve that problem for them with your solution. Understanding your product. Those would be sort of the main things for me. Self-image, understanding the buyer and their challenges, and then, understanding what your product is. Those are three main key areas honestly, it'll eliminate a lot of the self-limiting beliefs that you'll have if you do understand more about what you're selling and more about what your buyer really desires.
Thank you very much. I tend to agree. I think that we got to recognize who our client is. And the way we recognize who our client is by getting clarity on what problem we solve. and or the pain point, as you put it. And if when we understand what problem we solve, and we're talking about, what it is we do, because I think that's for one of the things that we struggle with sometimes is when you get introduced to somebody new, and they say, well, what do you do? Because that's kind of part of the conversation, or many conversations. Well, what do you do? Well, I'm in real estate. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean I'm an investor in real estate? Does that mean I'm a buyer of real estate? Does that mean I manage real estate? What does that actually mean? When I say, well, I'm in real estate. So I need to know what is the problem that I solve. I help new buyers become first-time owners or whatever. But it's important to have that clarity.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
and that's another topic of conversation in and of itself is
Yeah.
clarity. So,
Yeah, and how do you get that? So there's each one of those conversations, each one of those 3 points. We could talk a whole lot longer on it, and I think we will in future conversations. But for now, I think thank you, Greg, for this conversation and for walking us through some of your wisdom. And we look forward to meeting again.
all right, thanks, Don.